Yananai, nananai, nai, nai, nai. Yananai, nananai, nai, nai, nai. Yananai, nananai, nai, nai, yai, nai, nai. Yai, yanai, nai, nai. Yai, nai, nai, nananai, yananai, yananai, yananai. Yananai, nai, yananai. Yananai, yananai, yananai. Yananai, yanai, nai, 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 yananai. Yananai, yananai, yanai, nanai. Yanai, nanai, nai, nai, nai. Yananai, nai, 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 nai. Yanai, nai, nai, nai. Yananai, nai, 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 nai. Yananai. Yananai, nananai, yananai, yananai, yananai. Yananai, nai, yananai. Yananai, nananai, yananai, yananai, yananai. Yananai, yananai. Yananai. Yanai, nai, yanai, nai, nai. Yanai, nai, yanai, nai, nai. Yanai, yanai, nai, yanai, yanai, nai, yanai, yanai, nai, yanai. Yanai, 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 yanai. Yananai, nai, yanai. Yanai, yananai, 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 yananai. Yananai, nai, yananai. Yananai. Yananai, yanai, nai, nai. Yananai, yanai, nai, nai. Yananai, nai, yanai, yananai, yanai. Yananai, nai, 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 yananai. Yanai, yananai, 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 yananai. Yananai, nai, yananai. Yananai, 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 yananai. Nananai, nai, nai. Shabbat Shalom. I know I've told this story before, but I just had to think of it in that Nigun. And it's the story told to me about an FSU Jew, a former Soviet Union Jew, who was asked, one of the refusenikim, who was asked what their favorite holiday was. And it said Simchat Torah, which is a good holiday to have as a favorite, but it's probably not the most common answer. And the question was asked why. And the answer was one that, well, where we in the United Kingdom can check our privilege, I guess. The answer was because it was one of the holidays where the KGB did not allow the chains of the synagogue to be unlocked and the people to go inside, which means to celebrate Simchas Torah, the people had to be outside the synagogue, on the streets, for everyone to see. And the comment that this Jew had made was, you know that your name's taken down anyway, and this time it's worse. You celebrate more when you know that you have something to lose. And I think that that's maybe why Judaism is so difficult sometimes in where I grew up in the United States, in the United Kingdom, why it doesn't matter who you talk to, there are the wailing and gnashing of teeth of synagogue membership down. And it's not a problem in one place, it's a problem pretty much everywhere in the Western world. And I think maybe Judaism, as we are in the shadow of the anniversary of the freeing of Auschwitz, the liberation of Auschwitz, I think that it's all too easy for us as we go about our lives to treat Judaism as if we have, well, as if it's not something that can be lost. And when you know that you can lose it somehow or another, it just makes Judaism, certainly Shabbat, much more poignant. And maybe we can honor our tradition, especially in the echo of such a terrifying day, or a day that reflects such a terrifying history. Maybe we can honor all those that were lost by actually acting as if we can possibly lose our Judaism. Because if anything has taught us in the year 2020, moving into 2021, if we think that we can't lose it, that's when we start losing it. Listen, there's an elephant, a rhinoceros in the corner. For those of you who are not aware, it was announced this week that I will be in April 17th, will be my last day at Sinai as I retire from the Congregational Rabbinate. I'm not going to talk about it from the Bima. I said in my letter what I wanted to say. What I did want to say tonight is to acknowledge that, to thank those of you who did reach out to me, every one of those notes and letters, a few handwritten, I cherish more than I can possibly tell you. To the couple of people who reached out to Katrine, I can't even tell you how meaningful that was. And things take on a different poignancy in times of loss and transition. So if there can be any meaning of our time left, it is the poignancy of nothing lasts, everything changes, night rolls into day and day rolls into night. And so what do? We celebrate Shabbat. And what do we do when it gets worse? We celebrate Shabbat. And what do we do when it gets better? We celebrate Shabbat. And what do we do when it's the worst day of our lives? We celebrate Shabbat. And what do we do when it's the best days of our life? Well, we celebrate Shabbat, because that's what we do. We're on page 111. Actually, we should probably say the bracha over our candles. Please rise if you are lighting those with me at home.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner, shel Shabbat.
We are on page 111. We begin our journey together to find Shabbat. Because if you're ready for it, I don't know what you've got. I need a little bit of it. None of us are really ready for it until we've worked for it. 6 Psalms to get to Shabbat, and then we stand up, turn around, and greet the Shekhinah, the presence of God, that which we allow to become manifest in our lives. Page 111.
Lechu nerana l'Adonai, Lechu nerana l'Adonai, Nariya l'tzur yishenu, Nariya l'tzur yishenu, Nekad mafanav vetoda Bismira narialo, Nekad mafanav vetoda Bismira narialo, Ki el gadol Adonai, Umelech gadol hakol Elohim, Ki el gadol Adonai, Umelech gadol hakol Elohim, Asher b'mekare aretz metofot harim lo, Asher lo yam vehu asahu, v'yebeshedidav yatzaru, Boi nishtachve v'nichra'a, Nichra'a lifnei Adonai Yoseinu, Ki hu Eloheinu v'nachnu am arito v'tzon yado, Hayom mikolo tishma'u.
112. Sing unto the Eternal a new song. Well, if we sing the same melody, how is that possible? And the answer is we renew it with our kavanah, with our passion, with our coming back to our melodies and our words.
שירו לאדוני, שיר חדש שירו לאדוני, כל הארץ. שירו לאדוני, שיר חדש שירו לאדוני, כל הארץ. שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו, בסרו מיום ליום ישועתו. שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו, בסרו מיום ליום ישועתו.
114.
ישמחו בשמיים, ישמחו בשמיים, ישמחו בשמיים, ותגל הארץ. ישמחו בשמיים, ישמחו בשמיים, ישמחו בשמיים, ותגל הארץ. Yiram hayam, umalo. Yiram hayam, umalo. Yiram hayam, umalo. Yiram hayam, ישמחו שמיים ותגל הארץ, ירם הים ומלואו, יעלו שדי וכל אשר בו, אז נקלצי יער, לפני אדוני קיווה לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט טבע בצדק, ואמין באמונתו. אדוני מלך תגל הארץ, ישמחו עם רבים, ענן ורפל סביביו, צדק משפט מכון כיסו.
Last 4 lines of 115.
אור זרוע לצדיק וישרה לב שמחה. אור זרוע לצדיק וישרה לב שמחה. שמחו צדיקים באדוני והודו לזכר קודשו, לזכר קודשו. אור זרוע לצדיק וישרה לב שמחה. אור זרוע לצדיק וישרה לב שמחה. מזמור שירו לאדוני, שיר חדש, כי נפלאות עשה, הושיע לו ימינו, וזרוע קודשו, הודיע אדוני. ישועתו לעיני הגויים, גילה צדקתו. זכר חסדו ואמונתו לבית ישראל לבית ישראל. Adonai malach יגזו עמים יושב קרובים תנות הארץ עד נב ציון גדול ורמו כל העמים ושמך גדול ונורא קדוש הוא.
Bottom of 118.
רוממו רוממו אדוני אלוהינו רוממו רוממו אדוני רוממו רוממו אדוני אלוהינו רוממו רוממו אדוני וישתחוו להר קודשו וישתחוו להר קודשו וישתחוו להר קודשו וקודשו כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו כי קדוש אדוני כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו כי קדוש אדוני וישתחוו להר קודשו וישתחוו להר קודשו וישתחוו להר קודשו וקודשו וישתחוו להר קודשו וישתחוו להר קודשו וישתחוו להר קודשו וקודשו. מזמור לדוד אבל אדוני בנהלי אבל אדוני כבוד ועוז אבל אדוני כבוד שמו ישתחוו לאדוני בהדרת קודש כל אדוני על המים אל הכבוד ירי אדוני על מים רבים כל אדוני בכוח יעני כל אדוני בידן כל אדוני שובר ארזים ויש באדוני את עזי אבנון וירקידם כמו עגל לבנון וסיריון כמו בן רעמים יעני כל אדוני חוצב לעבוד אש כל אדוני יכיל מדבר יכיל אדוני מדבר קדש כל אדוני יכול אל איילות ויחשוף יערות ובהחלוק כולו אומר כבוד יעני אדוני למה בו ישב וישב אדוני מלך לעולם אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום na na ya ya na 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 ya na 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 ya na ya na ya ya na. לקראת כלה פני שבת, פני שבת, פני קבלה. שמו וזכור בדיבורך השמיענו אל המיוחד אדוני אחד ושמו אחד השם ותפארת ולתהילה אליך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת, פני שבת, פני קבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלך כי יבמקו הברכה מראש מכם נעשוך סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת, פני שבת, פני קבלה. מקדש מלכים מלוכה ומצאתי מתוך ההפכה רמלק שבת בעמק הבכה וגוי יחמול עלייך חמלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת, פני שבת, פני קבלה. התנערי מעפר גומי לבשי בגדך מבטך מיד יד בנישי בתולך מטובת נפשי כן יעלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת, פני שבת, פני קבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי כי כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת, פני שבת, פני קבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת, פני קבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת, פני קבלה. לא תבושי ולא תיקמי מה תשתוכחי ומה תמימך יחסו אני ימי ותחקרתי לה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת, פני קבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת, פני קבלה. ועין שיסה שעוזייך ורחקו כל מבלייך יסיס עלייך אלוהייך ימצאתך כלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת, פני קבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת, פני קבלה. ימין ושמאל תפרוצי ואת אדוני תריצי היד איש בנפגי ונשמחה ונגילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת, פני קבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת, פני קבלה. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ובצהלה תוך אמוני עם סגולה בואי כלה בואי כלה נכדותי לי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה לכדותי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה.
Now we reach Shabbat. Bottom of page 124.
Tzadik hatamar yifrach ke'erez balvanon yizkei shetulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu Od yenuvun beseva deshenim vera'ananim iyu lehagid ki yashar Adonai tzuri tzuri velo avlatabo.
126. We learn in Beshlach, this week's Torah portion, that we had to start getting manna off the floor of the desert. And when we went out on the seventh day, there was none there, and we cried and wailed, "Where's our manna?" And the answer was, I gave you double amount the day before Shabbat, so you didn't have to work on Shabbat. That's why we have 2 psalms for Shabbat day, for our 2 souls, for the double portion. What that means practically is, on Shabbat we spend a little bit more time figuring out what it means to be a mensch. And that's the extra capacity that we're supposed to then bring into the rest of the world.
Adonai malach geut lavesh Lavesh Adonai osit azar Avtikon tevet Baltimo Nechon kisecha me'az me'olam ata Nechon kisecha me'az me'olam ata.
Bless the living God, whom we are called to bless. Blessed is the living God, whom we are called to bless forever and ever. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'dvaro ma'ariv aravim b'chokhma poteach she'arim, u'vitvuna mishanei itim u'machalif et hazmanim, u'msader et hakochavim b'mishmo merotehem barakia kirtzono.
Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, and day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, and day turns to night. Boreo valayla gole or mipnei choshech gole nor mipnei choshech וחושך מפני יום. המעביר יום ומבין לילה, מבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב ערבים. אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו למדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נשיח בחוקך, נשמח ונעלוז בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגע יומם ולילה, ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב את עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני, אדוני אחד. שם כבוד, שם כבוד, מלכותו לעולם, לעולם ועד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך, בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם נאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם המזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. כי מהשמיים על הארץ למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם, אמת ואמונה, כל זאת וקיים עלינו, כי הוא אדוני אלוהינו, ואין זולתו, ואנחנו ישראל עמו.
All of this is true and firmly held by us, that you are our living God and none other exists. And we are Israel, your people. You perform great deeds beyond research, too wonderful to tell. Your children saw your power, praised and thanked your name, and willingly accepted your rule over them. With great joy, Moses and Miriam and the children of Israel answered you in song, all of them saying,
כמוך נהדר בקודש. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש. נורא תהילות אוסף אלי, נורא תהילות אוסף אלי. מלכותך אדוני אלוהינו, ראו בניך על הים. יחד כולם הודו וימלכו ויאמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי יפדה אדוני את יעקב ולא מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום לשלום, והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום לשלום, והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים. פרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, פרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום לשלום, והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים.
Source of our life and our sovereign, cause us to lie down in peace and rise again to enjoy life, and spread over us the covering of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel and save us for the sake of your name. Be a shield about us, turning away every enemy, disease, violence, hunger, and sorrow, and remove the temptation that awaits us and the guilt that lies behind us. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings, for you are a God who guards and protects us, a ruler of mercy and compassion. Guard us when we go out and when we come in, to enjoy life and peace both now and forever, and spread over us the shelter of your peace. Blessed are you, God, spreading the shelter of peace over us, over your people Israel, and all over all the world. Baruch ata Adonai, הפועל סוכת שלום עלינו ועל עמו ישראל ועל כל העולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. יעני ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש. Our silent Amidah begins on page 140.
Adonai sefetai tiftach, ufi agita hilatecha. Auf in Pripetschik brennt a Feuer und in Stub ist heiß und der Rabbi lächelt's kleine Kinderlach dem Alef Beis und der Rabbi lernt kleine Kinderlach dem Alef Beis. Seht'sche Kinderlach, gedenksche Teire, was ihr lernet noch. Sagt'sche noch einmal, Tage noch einmal, kommet's alle vor. Sagt'sche noch einmal, Tage noch einmal, kommet's alle vor. Für Kinder älter werden, wird ihr allein verstehen, wie viel in die Äußers liegen Tränen und wie viel Gewinn. Wie viel in die Oisies liegen Tränen und wie viel Gewehen. Als wird Kinder dem Goles schleppen, ois gemutschet sein, sollt ihr von die Oisies keuch scheppen, kocht den See rein. Sollt ihr von die Oisies keuch scheppen, kocht in See rein.
As several of my rabbinical colleagues posted on the 27th of January, the time to never forget is now. Not a magic wand. Maybe it is. It's not another Harry Potter sermon, although I think that got the most clicks ever on a Facebook post. Conductor's baton, the price finally rubbed off it after many years, purchased 1991, I think, for my first conducting class. Two different influences in conducting, directly teaching over time. The first, my high school band director, maybe more of an influence over the course of time, not for the right reasons, but nonetheless, someone who conducted passionately and brought into my lexicon what the easy 4/4 beating pattern is. And if you've always wanted to figure that out, it is floor, door, window, ceiling, right? 3/4, floor, window, ceiling. So nice and easy there. Of course, what my band director in high school actually taught me, in secondary school taught me, was the power and the magic of the baton. Because, of course, as public high school students, we probably needed a little bit of discipline. And so part of the way that it worked is when Mr. Nielsen would walk onto the stage for a performance. We practiced this, of course, in our normal everyday time in the band room. But when he would walk on stage, we'd be sitting there after having tuned up, and as soon as he appeared, then the instruments, so my clarinet in this case, from our laps, and then rigid onto our knees. And about 65 people in our symphonic wind ensemble, all those instruments, of course, trombones didn't do it that way. They had their own way because, those things will seriously harm you if you too fast. And then as soon as this happened, all instruments in the same motion up to our mouths, the magic of the rising wand. When I studied with someone who I wish his name was out there in the world and the great conductors, because he sure was an amazing teacher, Todd Fiegel, ended up conducting my undergraduate thesis work, a German Requiem Mass. He taught it a little bit differently. He threw the floor, door, window, ceiling out of the window, and he taught about the use of space, how to draw in attention. And instead of that simple beating pattern, he had this plane drawn out in front of us. And the pattern was bouncing off that plane, so that every beat was this magical. All of them in almost the same space. Of course, the harder part was what we did with our other hand. And we had to practice making the orchestra go louder and then quieter. And you learned that if you move your hand up like this and down like this, it doesn't do anything because it's just empty gestures. You have to have resistance in that movement. The hand going up has to show, even if I'm not actually shaking it in pain, it has to show that the movement of volume from soft to louder to more intense has to have something behind it. There has to be meaning. In order to have this have any power, there has to be intentionality behind the movement. Because, when that motion happens, and we're ready to play music, when the baton goes up, all possibilities in the world are there in that moment. Who's the conductor? Who's being conducted? What are we about to play? How are we being played? The symbol is almost too easy to tie to Torah this week. And for the rest of the time that I spent here, I'm going to modify how I do sermons a bit. I just want to talk for the next few months about symbols. I want to break some symbols down. Not symbols, since I'm talking about orchestra, but symbols. Yes, you orchestral people, you're welcome. And rather than leave charges, just to show how deep we can step into our tradition and how appropriate our symbols are. Because the symbol I want to look at in Parshat Beshalach is the symbol of the raised hands. The great orchestral conductor Moshe Rabbeinu conducting survival, conducting war. The verses that we'll read tomorrow in our Torah reading tell of, well, first of all, we just got past in a previous triennial cycle the parting of the Sea of Reeds, which also involved a type of holding one's hands up. And then we have a second one with the water needing to come from the stone. So held up hands are what's supposed to happen the second time. Both times, Moshe Rabbeinu strikes the rock instead. And then, of course, the horrible memory in our collective consciousness of after the water finally appears at Meribah, that we are attacked from behind, according to our midrashim, the sickest and the weakest among us, attacked in a cowardly fashion by Amalek. And so we have this amazing story, this amazing vision of Moshe Rabbeinu raising his hands like the great orchestral conductors. And as long as his hands were up, we prevailed against Amalek, and as soon as his hands fell down from exhaustion, and oh, I can tell you, you try to conduct a long piece, you'd better be in decent physical shape, because it's not easy. When his hands sunk, the forces of Amalek began to prevail. Our sages asked the question, is it Moshe's arms that caused us to prevail? And although the answers are many and varied, the answer is always no. This is not a magical feat, any more than the lifting of a baton in a symphony can cause the clarinetist to play the correct notes, which can be a challenge on occasion. Other instruments probably even harder. As the old joke goes, how do you play a minor second? Ask two piccolos to play a unison. The three of you that got it, you are welcome. I'll give you a chance to pause and wipe your face. But any more than the raising of the arms can cause the instruments to play, there's something deeper going on, isn't there? And according to our tradition, it wasn't that Moshe raised his arms, it was that his arms were a type of banner, a type of flag, a symbol that when we, the people of Israel, looked up, we felt heart. We felt strengthened. We felt like we were part of something greater than ourselves. And when we could no longer see that, we lost that sense of unity and strength, and we lost the ability to keep on in that battle, no matter how hard the battle is. Now, it gets more dramatic because Aaron and Hur, first of all, they sit Moses on a stone. So exhausted was he. And then Aaron takes one of his elbows and Hur takes the other one, and they sit there propping up Moses in what has to be the preview of every Monty Python sketch about religion that has ever happened, if it weren't so serious about the king who wanted to utterly wipe us out and began to do that by taking out the weakest among us. So here's the symbol. First of all, there's a rule, I think, that we have to have in order to explore this. If we're going to be a part of this symbol, if we are going to see ourselves as Moses or as Aaron or Hur or the people of Israel who are fighting, then it has to be for a just cause. The symbol is not if the cause is not ethical, if the cause is not constructing. This is not a symbol, a metaphor that can be used for the people who tried to overthrow the U.S. government on the 6th of January. It has to be for a just cause. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. You cannot have yourself or myself inside of a symbol, a heroic symbol that is based on such profoundly destructive tendencies. And whether we see ourselves as a leader or an individual within a group such as that, and even if we look back and say, well, they thought it was a just cause, we as adults do have profound responsibility to challenge what we are hearing and the amount of people who still believe in QAnon and these other lies that drove a modern insurrection in what has been a beacon of democracy in this world. As adults, we don't have an excuse. We have not only responsibility for challenging what comes into our consciousness, but also challenging what we bring into others' consciousness. So no, it is not for such an event that we can step into this metaphor. Because Moses was the leader as we came out of slavery, as we were fighting to find what it meant to be free. And yes, those metaphors can be used brilliantly, but only constructively and not destructively. So who are our dramatis personae within this beautiful drama? Well, we have the leader. We can take the metaphor anywhere we want. It can be a religious leader. It can be a political leader. It can be a project manager. It can be a leader of a family. It can be a leader of an activity. The word leader is self-evident, and the word leader can be used in many situations. And then we have the leadership, Aaron and Hur in this situation. Two people who are not giving the clearest direction at this moment, but recognize the needs of the moment, recognize what's happening, and wordlessly, it seems, figure out a way amongst themselves to lift up this failing leader. It's not even trying to make this a self-serving sermon. I'm actually talking about other things. And then you've got the people who are a part of the unity that's created by this symbol, the flag, the outstretched arms, the person who is able to somehow communicate thoughts or purposes of the eternal to the people fighting and actually dying in this moment. The metaphor writes itself, because if we're talking about our job, who is the person who has the vision? Who are the people who helps with the vision? Not by blindly following. I'm guessing that Aaron and Hur argued amongst themselves over and over again. Hur, what do you mean? Holding up his arm in that way? That's never going to work. That's Moses. He gets tired. You know he gets this cramp. They, of course, argued. We're Jews. What do? They did what needed to be done. And the people, well, they fought and kept on looking up to see that banner was there. All of us on the team. Some of us can be a leader one moment, like being a rabbi in a community or a priest or an imam or a CEO or a project leader or a leader of a family or a leader of a project or a leader of an action. We can all be that. And then the next time that we're called to be part of something, we might be out there fighting on the front lines. When we decided to build out this synagogue so that we could have bar and bat mitzvahs in it, even in a time of COVID, I was able to be the leader for the original vision of how that could look. And then Ivan Hershkovitz and Tom Cohen took over with building this stuff. And I certainly was not the one holding up my hands. I was barely able to fight the battle at that point. It always is switching, but in each moment when that activity needs to be done, this has been started, there is a division. The hands being held up, it's to remind us in that moment, are we holding up the hands? Are we making sure the person whose hands are held up can remain up? Or are we making sure that the work and the vision is getting done? The awareness of where we are in any given moment is a beautiful way to understand our life activities at any given moment. Let me close out the symbol, because there are other options as well. We could choose to sit apart from the leadership in the battle. And we can, without taking part, comment on how Moses is a bad leader, Aaron and Hur do not belong in their positions, and each person out there fighting should be doing it differently. We can sit around and experience Schadenfreude as our primary way of being a part of any activity. We can be afraid to join in. It's a real thing. We can find ways to redefine what it means to fight, because we can be bringing water to the fighters. We can be bringing food. We can be carrying away the wounded. And then also in the story is Amalek. Anytime that we step into a room and there is a leader, and that might be us, holding up their hands, waiting for everyone's instruments to go to the right places, waiting for the infinite possibility with that moment of leadership. We owe it to this beautiful symbol in Torah to recognize, have we raised our arms? What an awful responsibility that leadership is. Are we there to make sure the leader can keep their arms held up? What an awesome and terrible responsibility that is. Are we out there fighting, making sure the vision happens? What a terrible and awesome responsibility that is. If we can't take part in those ways, are we finding our way? What a terrible and awesome responsibility that is. Or are we choosing a path of joining with Amalek? Not too many things are black and white. This symbol with Moses' hands raised as we're fighting our way to freedom is one that's not that complicated. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We are on page 310 as we rise for Alina. Please rise. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'atei gedula le'otzeh bereshit, asher bacha banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato, v'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu notei shamayim ve'yosed haaretz, u'moshav yekaro b'shamayim mima'al, u'shkinatu zo, begov meromim. Hu Eloheinu einod, emet malkeinu efes zulato, kakatuv b'torato, ve'yadata hayom, v'hashevota el levavecha, Ki Adonai hu Elohim, b'shamayim mima'al, ve'al haaretz, mitachat einod. V'ne'emar, ve'haya Adonai, lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. We take a moment to step into places of mourning, commemoration, and reflection for those that we have lost in recent days and at this time in previous years. And of course, we have these dual symbols this week. The first symbol of the liberation from Auschwitz, international recognition of Holocaust Memorial Day. And then many Tu B'Shvat celebrations were done on Motzei Tu B'Shvat because of the importance of commemorating the liberation of Auschwitz. But the symbol of that being very much like the symbol of Yad Vashem, if you've seen it, it's if you get a pin, it's barbed wire with a leaf growing out of it. And Tu B'Shvat contains that symbolism, the 4 glasses of wine, the number 4 always meaning transformation, the first all-white wine recognizing, or white grape juice recognizing the earth in winter, seeming as if nothing could ever grow again. And then the second glass with white with a little red, showing the beginning blooming in the earth, the greenness that just starts pushing through. And then finally half and half, as spring begins to bloom, that we see the remnants of the death of winter, but at the same time we see new life starting to come. And then finally, in the full bloom of summer, we have our full glass of red wine with the tiniest olive-sized amount of white that goes back in to remind us that winter's coming again. As we step into times of memory, so is it. And some of you who are in times of mourning right now, many of you that I've spoken to, that is always the reminder that the earth does inevitably begin to bloom again. As much as our heart feels like it is filled with winter, it will be summer. And we go through the process of transformation by joining with each other in Shabbat, calling each other, getting help we need, reaching out and helping others in need. Today, we think of the 6 million Jews that were murdered in the Holocaust. We think of those that we lost in just the last few weeks and months, those that are still in Shloshim. We think of Peter Clausen, the father of Caroline Israel. Simon Gublar, the father of Robert and Nick, and of Emmanuel Pine, the son of Linda Harrison. Those that we lost at this time in previous years, we think of Gisela Dyson, the mother of Robert Dyson, and Jean Compton, the grandmother of Jade Marlowe. We think of Pearl Berger, the mother of Louis Berger, mourned by the entire Sinai family. We think of Michael Bloom, the grandfather of Hannah Bloom. We think of Elizabeth Rebecca Levy, the aunt of Elsha Prince. We think of Cyril Nelson, the father of Bernard Nelson, and of James Walsh, the husband of Vanessa Walsh. Zichronam levacha. May all of their memories forever be a blessing. If you are in mourning or commemoration, I invite you to rise now, as you are then joined by the rest of us who stand with you in solidarity as we open up the gates of compassion for those who are saying Kaddish at home. Page 316. Yitgadal.
Say shalom b'romav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imeru, amen. May the source of strength grant strength to all those who are in mourning, and may we all say, amen. Couple announcements. I got a text right before Shabbat started from Thea to remind me that there is an open mic night coming up. It's not written down, I didn't memorize it, but Thea asked me to say it, so it will be said. Although she did recommend someone do Hava Nagila in the style of Biggie Smalls. That could be funny. Thea, if no one is actually taking that on, you have the responsibility for that. So Hava Nagila in the style of Biggie Smalls. I'm not touching that one. Next Adult Education Gateways into Judaism is Sunday at 3:30 p.m. Obviously, the class will be cut short from the full class into May. All that I'd planned to teach for the Gateways into Jewish Thought will still be taught. I think we'll only have one time to go through Gateways into Jewish Practice, so we'll probably do an extended class or something like that to get some of those ideas in there. So if you have kids, if you're watching this, first of all, this is for kids and adults as well, but we have just for primary school children aimed services taking place via Zoom at 4 p.m. on Fridays before regular services. If you haven't tried them out, try them out, a way that we continue to expand what we're able to offer in this time as long as we are in lockdown. Continue to buy Sidurim. If you are at home still flipping through the flip book, why are you doing that? You need to have Sidur in your hands. This is important. So go ahead and look on the website. You can see where you can order them. And come and celebrate a special birthday. This is a big one. Just in case the person whose special birthday might be watching right now, look in your emails and look on the website. This is really, really powerful. And what is being done is something I've seen someone else in the community do. It's really beautiful. Make sure you're a part of it. So I know I'm being all mysterious. Go onto the website and look for the information. And finally, there is a concert on Wednesday coming up, 3rd of February, 8 p.m. And it's being advertised as Rabbi Paul Moses Straskell will be performing an eclectic mix, some of which he composed from traditional Jewish music to traditional jazz. As it turned out, there's not a whole lot of traditional jazz in this, so if you want to hear a traditional jazz something, you'll have to do a Zoom standing ovation, and I'll do an extra piece. It's a different exploration of ways to look at Jewish music, starting 150 years ago, moving up to things that were composed in even the last weeks. So with that, we close out our service. For those of you who are still here, having looked at what happens in the middle of the service, I know that things start really popping down during announcements. I will tell you I was giggling after the Micha Mocha, for those of you who might have caught that. I wanted to play the Debbie Friedman, who's this time of year is also her yortzeit, and it's been 10 years since her passing. I wanted to play one of her two tunes for Mechamocha, and as I started strumming, I couldn't remember either for my life. I could not get any of the tunes into my brain, even though I sung them a billion times. So what you heard tonight was an improvised new melody from Mechamocha. So if you like it, comment on the Facebook page that you like the Mechamocha, and I'll go back and listen to it and write it down. So that was actually a world premiere of an improvised work. That's why I was laughing. I just could not think of the melody, so that's how I got myself out of it. Never know what's going to happen in a synagogue. It's time for Osei Shalom. Let's leave this space of Shabbat services together to enter into our spaces of Shabbat dinner and celebration and talking. And if we're by ourselves, maybe reading and studying or reaching out or just figuring out how we can be that leader or the support to leader or the person who's out there making that difference in the world. Osei Shalom. I think I'm in the wrong key. Haven't done this one in so long. Let's see if I can get a key. It's pretty high, isn't it? Osei Shalom b'Roma. Yaseh Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imeru amen. Osei Shalom b'Roma Yaseh Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'yimeru, amen. Yananai, 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 Osei Shalom b'Roma, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imeru, amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. All right, if you are still with me, time for a little Kiddush together. If you want to join me, on page 452. Va'erev va'evoka yom hashishi va'echul hashemayim ve'ha'aretz v'chol tzeva'am va'echal Elohim b'yom hashvi'i melakto asher asa va'yishbot b'yom hashvi'i mikol melakto asher asa va'yevarech Elohim et yom hashvi'i va'yikadesh oto ki vo shavat mikol melakto asher bara Elohim la'asot savri chavarai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho v'ratzon hinchelanu zikaron le'maaseh v'reshit ki hu yom techila le'mikrayei kodesh zecher l'tziat mitzrayim ki vanu v'charta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim Ve'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat lechaim. L'chaim. The moment that at least 20 of you have been waiting for. By the way, those of you who are still here, I know several of you commented that you have begun singing along with services more and more. The answer to your question is yeah, I can hear you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shechol niyeh b'dvaro l'chaim l'chaim. Shabbat Shalom.